Viewer of Northern Hubbard County wants to talk about the homestead credit. This viewer says the caller is a farmer and wants to know whether the Democratic-controlled House and Senate will restore the homestead credit that the viewer believes the Republicans took away several years ago. What's the status of the homestead credit? Who wants to talk about that, if anything?
Well, so the Tom's the tax guy, but I'll take a crack and you can correct me. The homestead credit, was truly direct property tax relief that the state gave to homeowners, people that own homesteads, in the form of a write down on their property taxes. So it was nothing that funneled through cities or counties, where they had discretion of it. It was money that went from the state directly to those homeowners on their property tax statement. And it was eliminated in 2011 in the budget after the state shutdown, I guess. And so in 2013, we did a number of things to restore property tax relief. We increased LGA funding, but we also increased what we call our PTR, the property tax relief program, where you get a direct payment if your property taxes go up a significant amount, and expanded that for several 100,000 Minnesotans, and an average, I think, of about $212. The viewer, though, one of the side impacts of the elimination of the homestead credit, one of the very significant ones, was the fact that it actually shifted property taxes away. It shifted property taxes to ag land. And I think that caller was a farmer. Mm-hmm. Right. And so it actually had an impact of even raising property taxes on ag land even more significantly than it did on homeowners and small businesses. It really raised property taxes on everybody, the elimination of it, but ag land in particular. One of the things we'd like to do this year is look at a similar thing, a property tax credit that would be applied to ag land. We already have it in statute, but it's relatively small right now. We'd like to expand that this year as one of our ideas for improving the situation around property taxes across the state.
Senator?
Well, the speaker, for a guy that's never served on the tax committee, did a very nice job of explaining that. There was, I think, an unintended consequence, and I could see it in 2011 when the Republicans eliminated the homestead credit. What they did to try and mitigate the impact, and I give them credit for trying to mitigate the impact on the individual homeowner, is they reduced the market value of your home. And the result of that was the tax capacity in any jurisdiction, much of the homeowner property tax base was taken away because it was just artificially reduced. Well, the local units of government were still going to levy the same amount of money, but there was actually less taxable property attributable to homes at that point. So when you levy the same amount of money, more of the burden fell on commercial industrial property, on agricultural type property, on seasonal rec type property. So there was a significant tax shift that went on. Frankly, I was very surprised as I watched all that play out, because I was the former tax chair of the Senate, so I had a pretty good understanding of what was going to happen. I was very surprised that the State Chamber of Commerce supported that tax reform, because I knew the impact it would have on increasing property taxes on main streets. But that is what happened. The problem with trying to change it back, and with any kind of changes in the property tax system, is there's always shifting going on. And the legislature generally has tried to mitigate the winners and losers in that. So you have to be willing, anytime you do any property tax reform, you have to be willing to commit some significant state resources on an ongoing basis to try and minimize the number of winners and losers. And I don't sense a lot of appetite in going into property tax reform this year. Most of the talk I hear is about taking a look at the new sales tax provisions that were implemented last year. That seems to be the highest priority among Minnesotans, at least. And so I think if we're going to do something more on property tax relief, it probably has to wait another session. But I tell you what, property taxes are a growing problem in the state. They've more than doubled in the last 10 years. And I think we need to keep a very close eye on those property tax trends, and it could well be by next session that it might be the issue people are talking about rather than warehousing and sales tax provisions.
Right. The description of how this tax was handled isn't exactly right. In that this was a credit that basically what the state did was reduce the property tax levy that was set by the local unit of government, and reduce that amount, and then the state would reimburse the difference. Unfortunately, in the previous 10 years, I don't think there was a single year where the state actually lived up to its promise to the local units of government. And, I saw this firsthand as a county commissioner in Isani County. It just didn't work. And what happened was that local units of government, when the state would run into a budget shortfall, they would steal money from this pot because it was easy, and the local units of government were left holding the bag for that amount of money. And the second part of the viewer's question was, will the Democrats bring this back? I think I'm going to give you a little bit of an out here, because it was a promise that Democrats made to the taxpayers. I think it was one of the top promises that Democrats said that they were going to bring back this market value homestead credit, and they have not. And frankly, I'm not sure they will, because it didn't work in the past as far as from the perspective of local governments holding the bag. And the state kind of stealing the money from the local governments. So it's probably not the best idea to bring it back. And as far as taxes shifting to ag land and to businesses, part of that tax package was Republicans had voted to eliminate the statewide commercial property tax, and we sent that bill to the governor's desk twice. So the fact that property taxes on Main Street went up, the governor vetoed that both times. So the fact that property taxes went up on businesses because of that that really fell on the governor. So and agricultural properties, I know that's been a concern through the recession when values for homes were dropping. Ag properties were the only properties that we're seeing either holding strong or in a lot of cases increased values through that recession, because farming was very strong through the recession.
There is no question that people that live in or represent the suburbs don't feel the urgency about this issue, and I'll just explain why. That elimination of the market value homestead credit was devastating to rural Minnesota, because the only homeowners who got it were those whose homes were valued under $414,000. If your home was valued over $414,000, you didn't lose anything when the homestead credit was taken away, because you didn't get it. So in many of the suburban cities, especially, Senator Hand's district, and I'm glad they have a lot of wealth in Eden Prairie, that's a good thing, but his community felt almost no impact of the elimination of the market value homestead credit. And where I live, where we have a lot of low-value homes.
And where I live.
And where you live, there was a huge impact. Most of the burden of the elimination of the market value homestead credit fell on rural Minnesota and rural communities, and that's what was so unfair about it. It seems like if we had to cut the budget, we all should have shared in that, and the wealther communities with the higher valued homes should have been asked to help contribute to the state's budget challenge.
The market value homestead credit was replaced with a different mechanism that, as Senator Bach said, reduced the value of those homes. So that was designed to mitigate. Now, whether it has or not, I think we probably should take another look and see whether that's actually helped those homeowners. But ultimately, going back to the market value homestead credit probably isn't the best idea, but I do believe that Minnesotans deserve some property tax relief, and I hope that we can figure out how to get it to them.
The only thing that I would say about this, I think the easiest way to sum this up is in the previous biennium, when the Republicans were charged to repeal the homestead credit, property tax help from the state was reduced by about $400 million. This year, we put about $250 million into property tax relief, including into the form of direct property tax relief, which was what the homestead credit did. I mean, people can talk about local governments. What I care about is the actual homeowner, and what the homestead credit did is take away direct property tax relief from homeowners. And the local governments, I'm glad that you care so much about local governments, but I care about the homeowners.
The statistics show that because of that budget that Republicans passed over those 2 years, that property taxes for homeowners statewide went down 3%. That's a fact. And we're going to find out tomorrow, because it's tomorrow afternoon, and I'm a little curious as to why it's happening on late on a Friday afternoon. But the initial projections were we're going to see the property tax numbers as a result of the Democrats' budget tomorrow afternoon, and we'll know at that time whether Democrats have lived up to their promises
Even
and
the
reduced
preliminary
property
numbers
taxes.
showed that the property taxes on homeowners went down under our budget as well.
Well-
and they're going to probably go down even more because preliminary levies tend to be higher than the final
Well, the
levies.
preliminary levies showed that we were going to see a 2% increase in property taxes
Not on
because of your
homeowners.
budget. So
Not on
we'll
homeowners.
find
Your
out
property
tomorrow
tax increase
afternoon. so.
overall was significantly higher than that, as you well know, than the 2%. But on homeowners, it actually did go down.
Senator Hand, any thoughts on this?
Well, it's been pretty well hashed out here. There's not a whole lot to it. I do think that generally, though, I do get concerned when we make a commitment at the state level to do things to, in effect, pay the property taxes of local people. I do think that's a problem. We have local government, school boards, and they are charged with providing services for local people. And we've done things over the years to distance local folks from their local government. And that, to me, is a bad way to govern. You have to make sure that people who elect folks to represent them on the school board or city council or counties, that they have the resources to do what they want, and they have to have that check and balance so they don't overspend. If we don't have that relationship, then what we're left with is letting those local unit governments continue to spend at the rate they do, and then come to the legislature and say, make it up, make it up. That is not a good governing model, and we've done too much of that. We need to restore some balance in this. I'm not going to say that what we have is the right balance, but we need to keep looking at the property
Well,
tax.
the state has a role to play in being kind of the equalizer. And here's my example. And the property tax system is very complicated. And it's complicated because whether you live in Senator Hand's district and have a $500,000 home, or you live in my district and you might have a $60,000 home in the little town of Cook where I live, the cost of a fire truck is the same. To provide for fire and emergency services, and who has more capacity to be able to pay for one. And so the state has formulas to help mitigate property tax impacts so that essential services in communities, things like water lines and sewer lines and public safety, that there's not a disproportionate burden in different communities. The ideal situation would be that the property tax burden on a $100,000 home in every district around the state would be the same in every home. And to the extent we can, we try to mitigate that with the property tax system so that essential services can be provided for at the same kind of tax rate in different communities, and that's very complicated.